Jai Hind, a very good morning. It's a matter of immense pleasure and a sense of honor as we gather here today for this distinguished occasion for launching of book on India, China and the Strategic Himalaya, written by Dr. Sangeeta Thapliya, Professor, JNU, New Delhi. I, Dr. Neetu Pawar, Director IQAC, extended a warm welcome to Honorable Vice Chancellor Sir, Major General G.K. Thapliya, respected CEO Ma'am, Dr. Shaurya Raj, Pro Vice Chancellor, Dr. Abhay M. Shankar Gowda, our distinguished guest, Dr. Sangeeta Thapliya and Mr. Shaurya Doval, all respected deans, HODs, faculty members, dear students who have graced us with their presence. Honoring our guest by presenting the planter is one of the important aspects which supports the principle of our university, that is Siksha, Seva, Sanskar and Rashtriyata. Now, I would like to request Honorable Vice Chancellor Sir to welcome Mr. Shaurya Doval by presenting planter in Patka. Welcome you, sir. I would like to request respected CEO Ma'am to welcome Dr. Sangeeta Thapliya, Professor JNU, by presenting planter in Patka. We welcome you, ma'am. Before proceeding ahead, I would like to invite all our distinguished dignitaries for lamp lighting to worship Ma Saraswati. And also, I would like to invite students of performing arts for Saraswati Vandana. I would like to request all our guests and dignitaries to take your respective place on the stage. Please join us on the stage, sir. Ma'am, as you all are aware that today we have gathered here on the occasion of launching the book written by Dr. Sangeeta Thapliya. First of all, I would like to give a brief about Dr. Sangeeta Thapliya. Dr. Sangeeta Thapliya is a professor at the Center of Inner Asian Studies, School of International Studies, JNU, New Delhi. She has completed her master's and PhD in South Asian Studies. With her extensive experience and knowledge in this field, she has made significant contribution in inner Asian societies and cultures. Her noticeable area of interest are Indian strategic interest in Himalayas and Trans-Himalayas, India's relation with Nepal, Bhutan and Tibet, South Asian security, water security in South Asia. She has several peer-reviewed publications and books in her credit. Few are Political Disclosure of Nepal, India and Nepal Treaty in 1950, the Disclosure in Federalism in Nepal. List is huge. I extended my warm welcome to you, ma'am. Now, I would like to call upon Dr. Sangeeta Thapliya to share her conceptualized thought about this book. Welcome you, ma'am.
Respected Vice Chancellor, General G.K. Thapliya, Dr. Shaurya, thank you for giving me this honor to organize a book discussion in Subharti University. And this is my first visit here. I had heard so much about the university, how beautiful the campus is, and the infrastructure development, that has taken place here. It's wonderful, especially coming from a Sarkari university. It is like, one can only dream of these kind of infrastructure facilities. And thank you, Mr. Shaurya Doval, for taking out time from your busy schedule and agreeing to not only read the book, but also comment on it and be a discussant on the book. And thank you all for being here. Now, the idea of this book germinated after Galwan conflict, and then, Kalapani issue that was between India and Nepal. We had faced Doklam issue, a few years earlier as well. So the entire focus of the media or academicians, policy planners, and experts was on the strategic characteristic of the Himalayas. This narrative was focused around India-China border. The narrative, was focused on negotiations. How do you negotiate? How do you deal with these kind of issues that were emerging? Infrastructure in the mountains, and on brass tacks dealing with upscaling of security. Now, in this entire discourse, communities and people from the mountains was negligible. Probably coming from the mountains, it became slightly more personal to me, and I started to look further into this statist discourse and how to bring communities, people, and their voice in the mainstream. Now, in this book, when I talk about Himalayas, what we did, we took not only Indian Himalayan states, but also and we could not take all. For example, we didn't pick up Himachal Pradesh, or we didn't pick up Manipur, Meghalaya, etc. The idea was to pick up those states which were bordering China, where there were major strategic, interests that had, especially the developments that had taken place, and also incorporate Gilgit-Baltistan, Nepal, and Bhutan. Generally, we do not take those countries into consideration or those areas into consideration because we feel that there are different strategies. But for me, it was that how India and China are viewing this entire Himalayan belt, and how Himalayas are also Himalayan communities and states, how do they look when they are, juxtaposed between India and China. So this was the idea behind it. Now, if you look at the Himalayan region, it stretches from Afghanistan to the mountains of Pakistan, India, Nepal, Bhutan, and it is at the cusp of South Asia, Central Asia, and China. Now, so this geographical location has allowed transit of cultures, trade and movement of people from India northwards to Trans-Himalayas, and from Tibet and China and Central Asia southwards. It has assimilated Hinduism and Buddhism along with indigenous cultures, languages, dialects, and ethnicity. People have emotional and cultural sentiment towards Himalayas, especially Hindus, Jains, and Buddhists who revere Kailash Mansarovar. Ancient texts have written about Himalayas as a symbol of divinity and spirituality. Also, if you look at poetry, poems, and written on Himalayas, it is about its valor, that you gain strength from Himalayas. Especially if you look at Sino-India War, after that, so many poems were written in Hindi literature and others, discussing about Himalayas' magnificence in terms of its valor, that how it gives you courage. However, so there was what I'm trying to say is that there was a continuity in the movement of people, continuity in the ideas going from India to mountains to Tibetan region and vice versa. And Himalayas was a place where you had Indic civilization and Tibetan civilization. It was a mixture of that. Plus, you also had local dialects and local indigenous culture, etc. Himalaya was not considered as a buffer. Now, most of the literature that comes, especially in international relations talking about Himalayas, talks about Himalayas as a buffer. Buffer is a state which is between two large states, which acts as, where the two large states do not come face to face, or there should be no eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation between them. Now, this was not the definition of Himalayas earlier. But when Britishers came, they started looking towards Himalayas as a buffer. It was a construct to safeguard imperial interests in the Indian subcontinent from the Russian or Chinese empire. The Himalayan states such as Nepal, Bhutan, Afghanistan, Sikkim, Tehri Garhwal for that matter, had internal autonomy, but their external relations were directed by the British interests through their forward policy. The territory of the Himalayan states were restrained till the mountains, and the British claimed hills and plains through treaty arrangements. So many treaties were signed with, there were wars that had taken place either between Himalayan states and Tibet, or with Himalayan, Nepal had war with today's Uttarakhand, but earlier it was Kumaon and Garhwal, and they were expanding towards Sikkim also. So when British intervened, they signed agreements, treaties which were signed with them, which contained Nepal to where it is today. So the modern territory that you see of Nepal, actually it came into existence only after 1815 through a treaty that was signed between British India and Nepal. So is the case with Bhutan also, and Sikkim and Afghanistan. So this is where you see that the relations now that evolved were more strategic in nature. They were not interested in Himalayan culture and tradition. They were interested more in Tibet, and through mountain passes which went from these Himalayan states to Tibet for trade purposes. Later on, when railways started expanding in India, or for example, even in England, they needed wood, they needed forest products from the Himalayan states. That is the time they started looking towards the mountain region for wood, and later, of course, when they realized that climate conditions were so good, so they had their little settlements also. Mussoorie came up, Darjeeling came up, Shimla came up, etc. But that aside, the entire narrative, especially, not only of the states, but academicians also, they started looking and describing and discussing Himalayas from strategic point of view. They were looking at how mountain passes should be kept secure. So the emphasis on defining Himalayas as a spiritual and cultural transit route or trade route between India and Central Asia or Tibet had shifted to emphasis on its political entity now. Okay? Now the states which were earlier land-linked, now land-linked through cultural, and I told you that there was an easy movement between people and so that was now hampered. And what we see that now the states themselves started defining their existence as that of landlocked. Countries like Nepal, for example, they were not allowed to employ Europeans or Americans in their darbar until cleared by the British. Or if any conflict arose between Himalayan states or between the state and the people from another state, then the British had power to mediate for resolution. So the sovereignty of the states was eroded, and what we had were states with limited powers. Okay? Now, this geostrategic narrative that we see which existed during the British time period, now it continued when India became independent because of geopolitical compulsion. You know what happened in 1947 itself. The western front of India was disturbed by Pakistan. In the north, that we see that China had become communist and Chinese forces had entered Tibet. So Tibet was no longer the buffer. If you look at statements that were written during British time period, they were not talking about Himalayas as the buffer. Statements of Curzon actually say that mountain passes are important for us, but it is Tibet which should be a buffer between India and China or Tsarist Russia rather than the Himalayas. Now, Tibet's existence was not there, so because it was now under Chinese control. So the buffer itself was breached. So in our strategic calculation, the Himalayas became very important for us then. And then what we see in this scenario, India signed treaties of peace and friendship with the Himalayan states, be it Nepal, Bhutan, Sikkim. And these states were equally disturbed by the developments that had taken place in the north. For example, if you must have heard that Nepali media and scholars, they emphasize on the Treaty of Peace and Friendship that was signed in 1950, and they say that the literature that is coming from Nepal is that it was imposed on them, whereas it was discussed in the Baradari in Nepal for 2 years before it was formally signed. Similarly, Nepal requested India to modernize its armed forces, for which India had sent 150 members strong Indian military mission, and then later on they had sent 2 more military missions to Nepal to modernize their army. And Nepalese, at that time it was called as RNA, Royal Nepal Army. They do not have Navy and Air Force. So they were then given training in Indian military establishments. Similarly, if you see, after 1962 war, India had sent Indian military training team to Bhutan, which is generally led by a major general rank officer. And if you look at Nepal now also, Indian embassy has the largest military, what do you say, military wing in the world. Nowhere in the world India has such a large military wing as you find in Nepal. Why? Because just defense attaché is not enough. Every embassy has a defense attaché or a military attaché, right? And so just one defense attaché, generally of a colonel rank, nowadays brigadier, I believe, now that's not enough. So you have assistant military attaches dealing with welfare, dealing with pension, dealing with record facilities. Why? Because Indian Army has taken responsibility to disburse pension not only to Gorkha officers who were in the Indian Army, but also to all those central government or state government employees who worked in India but after retirement had moved to Nepal. So that's actually huge money that is disbursed from India to Nepal. That is one. IMTRAT is another which was sent to Bhutan. It is still there. Its headquarters is in Ha, more towards the Doklam side. And, through, they have military hospital in Thimphu itself, or otherwise, they have canteen facilities, etc., for the local people as well. So, through strategic interest also, you are trying to keep in touch with the local population, trying to, in a smaller way, but you're trying to take care of their requirements as well. Now, India tried to consolidate, this is in the Himalayan states which was happening. Now, India also tried to consolidate its security by setting up commissions. 2 commissions were set up. One was under Major General Himmat Singh Ji, who later on became your Deputy Defense Minister also, and Major General S.P.B. Thorat. Now, these gentlemen came out with their reports. I've seen those reports, which actually talks about how you upscale your security interests in the security in the Himalayas. How do you consolidate that? What kind of, arrangement should be there? How intelligence gathering has to be done, etc. Simultaneously, so this is the military aspect, you're trying to, strengthen your security and take care of that. On the other hand, India also tried to develop diplomatic engagements with China. It had signed a Panchsheel, and not only it signed a Panchsheel, it also actually nudged in Nepal to sign a treaty with China or engage with China and take Indian Panchsheel as a model. So in 1954, if India signs Panchsheel, 1955, Nepal signed Panchsheel with China. But 1962, according to me, Sino-India War that took place, it comes out as a game changer, because the Himalayan borders were closed, border trade had disrupted, and visit to Mansarovar through Himalayan routes had also ended. After the war, what we see that India had deployed, now you were trying to consolidate Indian Himalayas as well. So ITBP, Indo-Tibetan Border Police, it was deployed there, and it was given the responsibility to take care of the security of the Himalayan states. Later on in 2004, India adopted one border, one policy. So ITBP is there, which takes care of India-Tibet border or India-China border, and you have SSB, which was set up in 1963 actually, which guards borders with India's borders with Nepal and Bhutan. Now, one of the impacts of the Sino-India War was that Himalayan countries were, till such time, they were looking towards India for consolidation of their own security or taking care of their security. What we see that after the war, there were certain question marks in the minds of the leaders of Nepal and Bhutan. And this is something I am saying either through my interviews or the narrative that emerged from these 2 countries. And then you see that they also started saying that if India couldn't take care of its own security, how would it give security to the Himalayan states? And here it also demonstrated China's potential to militarily intervene in South Asian affairs. China's growing relationship with Pakistan and emergence as an arms supplier during 1965 war revealed its readiness to assist against India. We see, I'm not getting into details of all that because you people are already aware of it. China tried to cultivate and still trying to cultivate its relations with Nepal. And you see that this is the time that Nepal's domestic politics in these countries does play an important role. When the leadership changed and you had 30 years of panchayat, so when political parties were disbanded there. And many of the democratic leaders had come to India. So this is what the scenario in the country was. And here you see the narrative in Nepal changes from special relationship with India to that of equidistance between India and China. And it suited China perfectly. So sometimes, the discussion is, was China influencing Nepal? Or was Nepal already a ready partner which wanted to balance India and China? And generally that happens with the smaller countries or small states, that, especially if they are juxtaposed between two large countries, which you see that Nepal did that. In the case of China, what we see, in the case of Bhutan does not have diplomatic relations with China. So China's ambassador in India and Bhutan's ambassador in India, they are also attached to each other's country. All these were happening. We see that how border disputes that between India and China, countries have been trying to resolve it through either JWGs or through, working mechanism for consultation and coordination for border negotiations, which was established in 2012. And different kinds of dialoguing has been taking place between the two. And simultaneously, bilateral trade has also been developing between India and China. Trade has also been developing now, and between China and Nepal as well. So in this, what I find that there have been various discourses on China's aggressive postures in the Himalayas and the reasons to keep this issue alive, the reasons to keep the border issue alive. According to one school of thought, India has begun to improve its infrastructure and connectivity in the Himalayas. And that is something, for example, when our defense minister had informed Rajya Sabha that work was going on in 61 strategically important projects, out of which construction on 42 roads was complete. Now, when you do something like this, that actually disturbs China. It perturbs China that, they consider, this is a school of thought, I'm not saying that, which considers that Chinese military considers such development projects as a potential threat. Another school of thought is that Chinese aggression is concerned about America's move in the Indo-Pacific and India joining the Quad. It does not see it as an economic grouping, but as a strategy to counter China in the South China Sea. As a result, China is trying to hurt India in the Himalayas. Now, this is a kind of narrative that you find not only from the Western circle, even some of the Indian scholars have been writing on these lines. So there are two schools of thought which is emerging on why China is aggressive in the Himalayas. Now, if you look at India's narrative on the Himalayas has been strategic, that I told you. Now, since the Himalayas had been seen from strategic point of view, no, it was again authors have written it. I'm just picking up authors, and some of them happen to be from Indian Army also, who have written that Himalayan development, infrastructure development, etc. were neglected in the Himalayas with the fear that Chinese forces could enter India through the mountain passes. Today, India itself has changed. Your potential has changed. Your generation has changed. You do not have that fear of China which you had, soon after 1962. And here what we see that, there is an emphasis on the development of infrastructure in the Himalayas. However, because Himalayas were neglected for so long, what has happened is that there has been movement of people from hills to the plains. The development paradigm has been such that it did not help the natives of the land. Now, again, this voice comes from the Himalayan states, okay? Now, since Uttarakhand became a state, 734 villages have become ghost villages. Okay, similarly, whereas the natives of the mountains have been the eyes and ears of the government against the Chinese. Similarly, it was the locals who noticed Chinese movement in Leh or Pakistan's intrusion in Kargil. A stable, developed Himalayas would provide added strength to defend the borders. It would offset large-scale out-migration from the hills. Similarly, too much of in-migration has threatened ethnic composition, culture, and traditions of the Himalayan societies, leading to tensions. So, our submission was that government should try to economically develop the region, keeping into consideration the local requirements as well. At no point of time one is saying there should be either-or situation. Nobody is saying that. You develop infrastructure facilities. In fact, there are certain papers written by assistant professor is there in Central University of Sikkim, another from Arunachal Pradesh. What they're saying that you develop infrastructure which suits the military, army, but at the same time, it should also help tourism, which it will do. So which is at the same time, also have those, arterial roads which are going to villages, so that villagers also take advantage of the main roads which are being constructed for ABCD purposes. So, so there is no either or situation. Take into consideration the national requirements, which are strategic, which can be economical also. At the same time, also try to bring in the requirements of the local people. Now, keep this in mind. You cannot have one framework for the Himalayan states. I've been called by many people to write, coursework for the Himalayan states. And what surprises me is that, first of all, you got to really know what are the local characteristics of mountain. What is applicable in J&K is not applicable in Himachal Pradesh or in Uttarakhand. Now, I'm not saying because of the location of the state, but the people in the state also. What is the cultural composition is equally important. So the kind of industry that you can develop in one state, you may not be able to develop in another state. If you keep that into mind, then you get much better results. So every state has its own socio-cultural sensibilities, which must be dealt accordingly. The strategic framework has overshadowed the people's aspirations. The Himalayan societies are an important component in defending the state's borderlands. So a well-laid Himalayan policy that takes into consideration society, culture, ecology, and economy is imperative for a strong Himalayan borderland. And within this particular framework, in this book, we have 11 chapters where there are 2 army generals who are writing on India's strategic interests in the Western and the Eastern front. Obviously, they are more statist in nature, giving a military perspective. We also have authors, who've come from the state. For example, a person from Jammu has written on Gilgit-Baltistan, some person from Sikkim has written on Sikkim, and from Arunachal Pradesh has written on Arunachal Pradesh. How they look at their own location. How do they look, and where are they? The placement is equally important. And then we also have articles or two each on Nepal and Bhutan. What we have done here, we've first dealt with the historical aspect of how the relationship developed. And then we have come to the current situation and how the relationships are now developing and how Himalayan states are balancing between India and China. And within this framework, then I do not want to get into details of each chapter, what they're dealing with, but within this particular framework, we have tried to come out with this particular book on India, China, and the strategic Himalayas. We've also dealt with water. Water issues are equally important in the Himalayas. Now, at the end, I would say that Knowledge World, we approached Knowledge World. They were the first ones, our publishers, and they immediately agreed to it. And day before yesterday, actually, I was sharing this with the Vice Chancellor Saab as well. Now, Rutledge has agreed to, they have come in, and for the international marketing, now Rutledge will be, marketing the book. So with these words, I thank Subharti University, for giving me this opportunity to share my views on what we are dealing with in this particular book. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sangeeta Thapliya, ma'am, for giving insight about the relationship between India, Nepal, China, and the concept of Himalaya, how they are working and how they are coming up with all the solutions. Now, I would like to invite Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, respected CEO, ma'am, Dr. Sangeeta Thapliya, ma'am, Mr. Shaurya Doval, Pro Vice Chancellor, sir, to please come forward for the launch of the book. I request you all, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Now, I request respected CEO, ma'am, Dr. Shaurya, the CEO, Swami Vivekanand Subharti University, for an address note on this occasion. Welcome you, ma'am.
Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, respected Shaurya, sir, dear Sangeeta, ma'am, Pro VC, sir, all my dear deans, all faculty members, and dearest students. I really welcome Shaurya, sir, and Sangeeta, ma'am, to the university. Thank you so much for taking out time and coming today. First of all, I congratulate ma'am for this wonderful book. I'm sure it will be very enlightening and it will do wonderful in the world. It will be a record breaker, and I give you all the best of luck for it. And thank you so much for choosing Subharti University for launching it. I really thank you for taking out time and coming here. शौर्य सर, आप बहुत बहुत सारे लोगों से मिले होंगे. You must have met thousands of people. You will be meeting thousands of people, and you must have seen lots of universities and institutions in your career. You will be seeing, but आपने हमारे जैसा कोई नहीं देखा होगा जिसका मोटो शिक्षा, सेवा, संस्कार और राष्ट्रीयता होगी. My parents have made these institutions with a lot of hard work and with a lot of value system. यहाँ का नाम ही सुभारती है. सुभारती नाम मेरे पिता ने इस पे रखा था कि सुभारती है, एक अच्छा भारतीय बनाने के लिए जिस इंस्टीट्यूट को बनाया गया हो. आपको यहाँ पे हर सड़क, हर मोड़, हर बिल्डिंग का नाम किसी न किसी राष्ट्रीय भक्त पे मिलेगा. आपको 21 अक्टूबर, 14 अप्रैल, 30 दिसंबर और ऐसे दिन कहीं और मनाते हुए नहीं मिलेंगे. कोई और जगह ऐसी नहीं मिलेगी जहाँ पे क्रांतिकारियों के ऊपर एक इतना बड़ा क्रांति शहीद उपवन बनाया गया हो. So these are little things which I am mentioning so that you remember us, you come back again here again, and you visit us again, and you remember us always. Thank you so much for coming. I will not say anything else because today students and faculty are not sitting here today to hear me, but to listen to you and to listen to ma'am. So I will just thank you again. But definitely I will give a message again to my students and to my faculty members कि हम अपनी छोटी छोटी उलझनों में उलझे रहते हैं और ये भूल जाते हैं कि हमारा देश कितनी बड़ी बड़ी उलझनों से जूझ रहा है. जो मैम ने अपनी किताब में यही लिखा है that the nation is fighting for such bigger issues. तो हम अपनी छोटी उलझनों से निकल कर देश के बारे में सोचें and become good nationals. That is what the founders, that is what all of us give a message to every day. In the end, मैं नरेश थपलियाल जी को एक special thank you कहूँगी for always being and standing with us today, and I think it is a special effort from his side for making this day possible. So thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your insightful words. Now, I would like to request and honor to call upon Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir, Major General G.K. Thapliya, Swami Vivekanand Subharti University for the address now. Yeah, welcome, sir.
जय हिंद. श्री शौर्य डोवाल जी आज के मुख्य अतिथि प्रोफेसर संगीता थपलिया फ्रॉम JNU यूनिवर्सिटी, जिनकी बुक का आज हम रिलीज़ करा रहे हैं. हमारी चीफ एग्जीक्यूटिव ऑफिसर डॉक्टर शल्या and हमारे प्रो वाइस चांसलर डॉक्टर अभय शंकर गौड़ा, सारे डीन्स, हेड्स ऑफ डिपार्टमेंट्स, students from JNU and students from our university. This is indeed a great occasion for all of us to release a book, and that book is going to be very relevant in present day circumstances. Why I say this book is so relevant? Because if you see the aspirations of India, or if you see what India wants to become after this Amrit Kal is over, by 2047, India wants to become third largest economy in the world. India wants to become one of the knowledge leader in the India or in the world, Vishwaguru. So if India wants to become the largest economy, third largest economy in the world, if India wants to become the Vishwaguru in the field of knowledge, what are the impediments in that directions? What are the obstacles in that directions? And who doesn't want India to become a power in Asia? It's China. Because China wants, China's strategy or China's ambition, if you look at the history of China's ambition right from the Mao Zedong onwards, who said in 1939, that China should only work towards becoming a world leader, and till then lie low. His statement was that don't show your clouds, don't show your ambitions, lie low, and keep working towards your achievement goal. And that goal finally was refined by the present president of China, Xi Jinping, who said that ambitions of China to become a world leader, it was earlier 2050, he has reduced it to 2035. So that Communist Party of China, whose the leader is Xi Jinping, they want to become a world leader. They want to compete now with the USA, and in that direction they want to have, they don't want to have any competitor, at least in Asia. And India, being the liberal, democratic, emerging country, is the biggest threat to China in that direction. So why China is doing all this, it's very understandable. You have heard the name of Doklam, you have heard the name of Galwan valleys, and you have heard the name, that kind of border skirmishes that China is having repeatedly. Why? This is just to show why China doesn't want to resolve the border issue with India, whereas China has resolved the border issue with all other countries except India and Bhutan. Why China is showing its increased presence in our neighbors, like in Bhutan, Nepal, and to some extent, that China is trying to create disturbances in our northeastern countries. Why China is showing its presence in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Maldives, all these things, because he wants, or China wants to encircle India from all over. What India has to do in this circumstances, that book deliberates upon this, that what we need. So for this initiative, I thank you and congratulate Professor Sangeeta. She has really done a wonderful job by taking and going into the history and not only discussing one narration, one narrative, that it's only the strategic importance the Himalayan has in vis-a-vis with China. Himalaya is equally important in many other aspects. Like she told about the people of Himalayas living in that, their aspirations, their socio-cultural aspirations, their ethnicity, their culture, everything needs to be respected. And when we respect their ethnicity, we respect their socio-cultural aspirations, and we do development in the areas, then only we will be able to counter China. Not only this, there are some authors, they have mentioned and suggested India alone probably will not be able to counter China. India should align with USA, and the formation of the Quad, which China understand that is the anti-Chinese, not China says that it is not for the economic development of areas, but it is for the anti-Chinese Quad nations which are they doing. They understand it. And how China can disturb us, it is the only through these Himalayan states, by bringing them in their net, like Nepal, Bhutan. So you must have seen now, Nepal is also tilting much towards China. Despite all development, everything done by India. So Nepal is playing a very intelligent game by extracting things from China, by extracting things from India, and being a neutral state, keeping equidistance from both the countries. Am I right? So that is probably the strategy Nepal has adopted. When she is going to be in Kathmandu University, the Subharti would like to associate with you in carrying out some joint research program, carrying out just some joint studies. Our Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences and other faculties of our university would be very happy and would be obliged if we will associate with you in that program. Okay. I thank Shaurya ji for having accepted our invitations to be with us. Despite his very busy schedule, he has to leave early now, and he has considered my request to be here in the Subharti University. I thank you very much. Thanks a lot. You know about Shaurya ji. He is a think tank who is working towards how India should become a 5 trillion economy, how India should become economic power. His field of interest is the economics, and he is the think tank for the government of India. And I'm sure we will find India becomes 5 trillion economy very soon, and India becomes third largest economic power in the world. With those words, I conclude my speech here. Thank you. And thank you all once again. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir. As our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, already praised about next speaker, Mr. Shaurya Doval. But in the process, I would like to have a grateful and extend warm welcome to our renowned and distinguished guest, Mr. Shaurya Doval, who has graced us today with his kind presence and have time from his busy schedule. Mr. Shaurya Doval is an Indian founder and leader of right-wing think tank India Foundation that is closely associated with the Narendra Modi government. He is an alumnus of London Business School and Booth School of Business, University of Chicago. He has over 25 years of international investment banking experience, during which he had worked for the decades in London in leverage finance at GE Capital London office and the investment banking division of Morgan Stanley. He has also worked with corporate finance advisory at Arthur Andersen in India. He is an investment banker by profession who serves as the managing director of a Singapore-based wealth management firm, Torch Investment, a company chaired by Saud Prince Michel bin Abdullah Al Saud. He was awarded with Udyog.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Saab. Thank you, CEO. Thank you, Pro Vice Chancellor, Mrs. Sangeeta Thapliya, for having invited me to your esteemed university for a discussion on this book. I am first, of course, delighted to be here. It's both a privilege and an honor, and I'm very impressed with the university that I have seen. But today, the discussion is really about the book. As Professor Thapliya talked about her version of the book and how she came about writing this book, I also, ma'am, had a chance to go through some pages of the book. I cannot claim to have read all the chapters, but I did find that this book is rather insightful in the way that it frames the strategic discourse surrounding the Himalayas and then tries to analyze them very meticulously from India's interests. It goes beyond the diverse communities, cultures, natural resources, and political boundaries that define this region, and then tries to delve into the geopolitical landscape between India and China. It sheds lights on the narratives and discourses revolving around the Himalayas, sometimes challenging the conventional belief. Through their collective insight, the book provides a nuanced understanding of India's strategic pursuits, while incorporating the voices of peoples affected by these policies. This integration of both the strategic discourse on our interests and the people's discourse adds both depth and richness to the books as it goes about exploring the Himalayan dynamics. I think this book will be an invaluable addition to the existing knowledge on the Himalayas between India and China, and will captivate scholars and practitioners in the field of international relations, strategic studies, Himalayan studies, and South Asian studies. It's a well-researched content, and thorough perspectives will make it an indispensable resource for anybody seeking a deeper understanding of this critically important region. I would therefore encourage all of you, when you have the time, to go through this book. I know many of you are not China specialists or engage with China on a day-to-day basis, but it is important in a democracy that all citizens from all walks of life understand the threats and challenges as well as the opportunities that emerge from time to time. India is entering into a phase of rapid economic growth and rapid geopolitical, what I would say, influence, and therefore it will face various opportunities and challenges. One such challenge will be China. It will occupy the national narrative in the years to come. What we saw in Doklam, what we saw in Galwan are just the start of this challenge. This will affect us as citizens, as concerned citizens. Sometime it may also affect us in our personal lives with many of our friends or family being directly affected by this. This is a price every rising country has to pay for being important, of dominating the global space. India's time has come, and therefore I think in some form this challenge will face itself in the times to come. And I'm therefore delighted that scholars like Professor Thapliya are researching into these ideas and helping us talk. And why do we want to talk about this? I mean, one question will be, why does it concern all of you? As I said, the reason that it's important to have a discussion on a topic like this in a medical university or even in a sort of multi-dimensional university is because, as I said, these challenges will become India's challenges in time to come. And therefore, as concerned citizens, it is important that all of you make yourself abreast with these issues, try to find time to engage, if you can, in these, despite your busy schedules, in these discourses, and from time to time, give suggestions and ideas that what we can do as a country to be able to take on these challenges with the minimal amount of cost and disruption to our national life and to our national interests. So with this few words, I would like to thank the author for giving me a chance to have read the book, which of course, as an economics person, I would not have been otherwise been able to see. It was lying on my desk yesterday, and somebody at my think tank asked me, why are you reading about China? And what do you have to do with this? So I told him that, tomorrow I have to go to a function and I'm trying to read. This is how it happens. Otherwise, on my day-to-day basis, of course, I also look at China, but I look at China as an economic challenge and from what we can do. But this book gave me a very refreshing perspective on the historical and the geostrategic dimensions of the challenges it poses to us. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would strongly encourage you, once again, to go through the book, engage with the author if she is willing to from time to time, and then try to see what you can do in whatever you are doing in being able to help the country in dealing with this challenge. And to that, I will just add one line that, as you said, madam, I get a chance to go to many universities and also have studied in a few myself. I think this desire to build Rashtriyata is something very unique that I saw in this university, at least as being said, as one of the mottos. So if you are building patriots here, it is but right that you should be part of the challenges that your country will face in times to come. So with that, once again, thank you very much, and thank you for having invited me here today. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Mr. Shaurya, sir. for giving a novel thought that with the research, with the coordination, with the participation, we can come up with the challenges of existing problem. Yeah, thank you very much, sir. Now, time for the facilitation of our distinguished guest. I would like to request Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, respected CEO, ma'am, Pro Vice Chancellor, sir, to facilitate our distinguished guest, Dr. Sangeeta Thapliya and Mr. Shaurya, sir, as a token of gratitude and thanks for scheduling their valuable time for us.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we had a wonderful session about it's the book launching ceremony about India, China, and the strategic Himalayas. Professor Dr. Sangeeta Thapliya from JNU, we thank you a lot for giving us your time and then analyzing the book for us. And Mr. Shaurya Doval, founder, Indian Foundation, it was wonderful to interact with you even before the program and then in the program also. Thank you very much for being here with us. Honorable Vice Chancellor Dr. G.K. Thapliya is always supportive of newer ideas like this, and thank you, sir, for arranging such a wonderful program. Our CEO, ma'am, Dr. Shailya Raj, is always dynamic and inspiring us for such programs and about the nation. If something is there, she's always keen on it. Thank you, ma'am, for being here also today. The deans, HODs and HOIs, faculty, members, Director IQAC and team, Mr. Naresh Thapliya, special thanks to you for arranging. The students and staff who are attending, thank you all. Jai Hind.